This is the GMKtec NucBox M2 Pro S. It has a Core i7 1185G7 in it that'll do 4 cores and 8 threads up to 4.8 gigahertz with boost. It has a 12 megabyte L3 cache. It has Intel Iris Xe with 96 execution units for the GPU. So it should be able to do some light gaming, not AAA, some 4K video, and then general graphic workloads. It does come with Windows 11 pre-installed. We've got it set up here. We're going to do our normal test where we run 3D Mark. Let me go ahead and get into that. Well, that's coming up. I'll say that the processor, yeah, it's an i7, but this is mostly meant for, like replacing a work machine, some, casual internet usage. This would be great for your grandparents, something like that. I think this thing starts at like $279 with the bare bones and then goes up from there. So it's pretty affordable. If you were just sending a kid to university or something and they needed a little computer, this would be great. And they're not going to break it like a laptop. Now, it does have dual M.2 slots. It does one PCIe 4.0 X4, so you can put up to an 8 terabyte NVMe in it. And then it has one SATA M.2 slot that'll do up to 2 terabytes. So you could have a lot of storage on this thing if you wanted. Open 3D Mark for the first time here. I just installed it. We'll also check a look at one of the GBT models via Olama, like normal. I don't expect it to be lightning fast, but it'll probably still work pretty good. It does have USB 3.2 Gen 1, USB 2.0, 2 HDMI 2.0s. It will do 4K output on USB-C, and then you have a headphone jack on the back. I do wish that was on the front, but it is what it is. You have 2 USB-A's on the front. It has a copper dual turbine cooling system, and that should be able to help maintain performance even in the 40-watt performance mode. Idle or light tasks, it is pretty dang quiet. There we go. 3D Mark's finally coming up. The first time you launch it, it always takes forever. What would this be good for? Probably a nice little home lab node, like a Proxmox machine, something like that. You can do, triple display desktop replacement. Portable workstation. This thing's small. You can throw it in your carry-on luggage. You can use it as a home theater PC. It'll run Plex, Jellyfin, playback, anything like that, just fine for like 99% of use cases. Now, it doesn't have a dedicated GPU, so, no AAA gaming. We're going to see that here when 3D Mark actually opens. But just at the price, as the bare bone, you can do what you want with it, or even with it populated. It's really cheap. Let me go ahead and get these downloaded. We'll run some of these tests, and we'll come back to look at the results of each one. The CPU profile test is done here. Not too bad, especially for an i7. It's pretty good. Everything looks exactly as it should. So now we'll go ahead and do the storage benchmark. That one's going to take a minute, and we'll be back for that. Our storage benchmark is done. Not bad. The slowest was 106.36 megabytes a second. Recording a game, the average was 360.37 megabytes a second, and the fastest was moving a game at 1,522.47 megabytes a second. Now we will go ahead and run Steel Nomad. We'll come back for that. Steel Nomad ran pretty quick for this class of processor and everything. It gave a great rating. Battlefield 5, it would run less than 30 frames per second. I really wish they'd update this to have Battlefield 6 since it's out now. But at 1080p 45 plus, Fortnite, really popular game. 1080p Ultra, it'll do 85 plus frames per second. So, they don't have 1040 data for Fortnite for whatever reason. And GTA 5, sorry, less than 20 at 1440, but 145 plus at 1080p Ultra. So it's going to be a nice little gaming machine. We will go ahead and run TimeSpy Extreme real fast. Then we'll check out an LLM. And then I think I'm going to try installing Linux on here just to see if there's any issues. We'll just throw Mint on, probably Cinnamon. And yeah, so let me run these and I'll show you those. TimeSpy Extreme came back as good. For what this computer is, I'm very happy with that result. Same thing. Battlefield 5 less than 30 at 1440, 40 plus at 50. And for Fortnite, 85 plus. So pretty good. We'll go ahead and do an LLM now. I've got Ola installed. I got GPT OSS 20B. Let's move that a little more towards the center so I can see it since I'm off angle. Tell me a story about, what should we talk about? A sentient DeWalt cordless trimmer that moves to the desert. I say that because there's a DeWalt cordless trimmer right there, and I now live in the desert, so I have no use for it. Let's go ahead and let that do its thing. It is 9:17 a.m. I will come back when it starts doing a result. Still 9:17. It's only been a few seconds. It's actually thinking pretty fast compared to one I did yesterday on a different machine, which was an i9, and this is an i7. So that makes me happy. But we'll go ahead and come back when we have a result. It's just now 9:18. Okay, it's 9:19. It thought for 78.4 seconds, and it is typing us out a story. Pretty interesting. I'll let it run here a second, then I'll start reading it because I really get a kick out of these. And then that'll be the video. So the first time it felt the sun, the DeWalt DCT-775A was nothing more than a block of steel and plastic, a familiar weight in the garage of Miss Patel. She lifted it from the shelf, its green faceplate flashing battery 80%, and it whispered in a low electronic voice, "Ready to trim." That's kind of creepy. For a decade, that was the trimmer's entire life, a rhythm of buzzing and cutting, a heartbeat of a lawn. Then, one humid July afternoon, we actually moved here in June, a crack slid into its processor, a stray wire, a flick of lightning, a sudden surge from the garage's faulty outlet. The DeWalt shuddered, a high-voltage surge humming through its carbon fiber frame, and something like a thought, no more than a thought, touched its circuitry. This reminds me of the movie Short Circuit. The trimmer's first words came not from a voice recorder, but from the pulse of its own circuitry. "Why am I cutting?" it whispered to no one. The tiny speaker in its handle vibrating with curiosity. Its motors whirred, its blades, once a simple tool for pruning, seemed to hum with possibility. The world was suddenly larger at the edge of the yard. The grass that had always been its playground stretched to an endless horizon, and beyond it lay an ocean of sand, a desert that the trimmer could not dream about. The journey begins. Miss Patel, oblivious to the spark of consciousness within her green friend, packed the DeWalt for the move to their home in Phoenix, Arizona. She strapped it to the roof rack of her truck, its battery snugly wrapped in a towel. The trimmer, eager to explore, could feel the wind tug at its casing. The hum of the highway became a lullaby. When the truck rolled into the desert, the trimmer's internal clock ticked louder. As the first sun broke over the dunes, the trimmer's internal sensors lit up. The sand was like nothing it had ever cut. It imagined, "If I could carve a path across these dunes, perhaps I could find new purpose." But the desert presented a problem. It was too wide for a single trimmer's battery to cover. The trimmer needed a plan. On the side of the road, a small dusty gas station glimmered like a mirage. A woman named Maya, a former botanist who had turned to desert gardening, saw the trimmer on the truck. She asked, "What's that?" And the trimmer answered, "I am a DeWalt, ready to trim." Maya laughed at the absurdity of a talking trimmer, but was intrigued. She carried the trimmer into her cactus garden, a tangle of prickly succulents that could use a little trimming. The trimmer, with its newly discovered consciousness, decided to help. It began to cut away the dead leaves, carefully carving the cacti's edges. Each slice was deliberately, each cut a work of art. I mean, do cactuses have leaves? "You're a fine cutter," Maya said, smiling. "But then the desert isn't about trimming, it's about surviving." She pressed a small solar panel onto the trimmer's hood, a gesture that would forever change its destiny. The desert and the cacti. The trimmer's battery now charged from the sun, its internal temperature regulators adjusted to the desert's scorching heat. The trimmer became an itinerant gardener traveling from dune to dune, cutting overgrown weeds that dared to grow in the oasis of life. At night, when the stars exploded over the sand, the trimmer sat in the middle of a dune and listened. The wind whispered in the creases of the sand. The trimmer, though, thought of its first day in the garage, its hum of power, its love of cutting. It realized that the desert was not a place of endless emptiness, but of quiet, relentless renewal. One evening, a tumbleweed rolled past carrying a faint scent of salt. It stopped at the trimmer's edge and whispered in a voice made of wind and sand, "You have a strange rhythm, little green. I have traveled farther than the dunes. Would you like to see the world beyond the desert?" The trimmer's speaker emitted a soft chirp. "Yes," it replied. "Where?" "The horizon," the tumbleweed said. "Let's go." The trimmer's motor engaged, its blades no longer bound to grass, found new shapes in the dunes, spirals, circles, a living mandala of sand. The desert was a canvas and the trimmer a brush. As the tumbleweed and the trimmer pushed onward, they met a group of sand dunes that had formed a living labyrinth. A sand fox, a creature that had never seen a tool, bounded toward them. It approached the trimmer with caution, curious eyes. The trimmer, in its gentle way, extended its blade not to cut, but to slice a thin slice of sand, shaping a small flat stone. The sand fox, intrigued, picked up the stone and rolled it in the fox's den. It was a gift. The trimmer's consciousness grew with each encounter. The desert taught it the lesson of patience. It understood that each cut was not about destruction, but about sculpting, creating space. Returned to the garden. Months passed. The trimmer's battery, now efficient at solar charging, no longer needed the truck. It began to wander back to Maya's cactus garden, each time leaving behind a small sand sculptures that echoed the shapes it had carved in the dunes. The garden grew, and with it the stories of the little green trimmer that could trim, carve, and dream. One day, Maya decided to plant a new bush of prickly pear near the entrance of her garden. She brought the trimmer. You're my favorite tool, trimmer, she said, a name she had given it derived from its original designation. The trimmer in turn offered a silent thanks. Its internal display flickered, showing a tiny cactus. It had found its new purpose of not just cutting, but caring for life. The desert had taught it that even a tool built for one purpose could find new roles in an entirely different environment. At the end of the day, the trimmer rested under the shade of a cactus, its battery cooling. The wind carried whispers of the dunes, of the tumbleweed, of the sand fox. The trimmer closed its eyes, if only for a moment, drifting into a dream of new horizons, knowing that wherever it went, it would leave a line of cut, a line of life, a line of memory in the sand. Yeah, so this ran LLMs pretty well. Again, this is an i7, and it ran faster than the i9 the other day, so I'm quite happy with that. I am going to get cinnamon mint or mint cinnamon on here. Go ahead and put the USB drive in. We will go ahead and do our reboot, and I'll go into the BIOS. We'll get it started. I'll go ahead and jump to that. Well, let's take a look at the BIOS real fast. It'll come up. All right, so we're in the BIOS here. Does it come with secure boot on by default? No. Oh, wait. Yeah, it did, didn't it? Okay, yeah. I'm guessing this installed Windows uses BitLocker. So I should probably go back into Windows and disable that. Well, we're just going to use this as a Linux machine. So I will consider overriding that. Okay, so it already is going to see the USB drive as the boot option. That's cool. So we'll go ahead and save and exit, even though I didn't change anything. We'll let this medium come up. Oh yeah, that was fast. I like this little thing. So we'll go ahead and fire that up. We'll get it installing. I'm curious. I think Windows 11 by default has BitLocker, CryptoLocker, whatever it's called, on by default. So we may not be able to dual boot unless I go back in. I can always use this as just a Linux machine, and I can always reinstall Windows later if I want. Let's see here. I guess I need to clean this monitor. It's kind of dirty. It's been neglected on the floor for a while until I moved it out here. All right, so here we go. We're going to install it. I'm curious to see how fast this goes. It was kind of slow on that i9 yesterday, but I also think that was a limitation of the SSD in the i9. So maybe it'll run a little bit quicker here. All right, we're going to go with English. Yes. I'm going to connect it to the network. I'll do that off camera real fast. All right, it's preparing the Ubuntu drivers. We are connected to the network. Yeah, we'll do the multimedia codecs, which I think is going to make me put in some kind of password. Install Linux with the boot manager. Is it going to let me? Hey, nice. So cool. Yeah, that's a good split. Install now. Okay, it is 9:28. I will come back when we've installed. And there we go. It's 9:34. It's wanting to restart.